What's happening, everybody? I'm Steve, and welcome back to Junkdrummer TV, where I give my initial reactions, my hot takes, my analysis on the drummers of today and yesterday, and maybe tomorrow if I stick around that long. Up until about 4 weeks ago, I was a professional drum teacher, and I was a giggy musician, and I was those things for 20 plus years. Welcome to video 9 from the quarantine. Again, I say it at the beginning of all these videos. I hope everyone is staying safe and staying sane. Sanity is kind of hard to come by these days, isn't it? On top of being quarantined where I live, it snowed yesterday, which was just a fun little present that whoever gave to us. But that's okay, because this quarantine will be over and we will go back to regular life. Hopefully, one day, someday. Before we get into the episode, let me thank all of my new patrons on my Patreon. Thank you very much, Gunnar Smits, Eddie Kim, Eli Wyson, which is the first patron that I have that used to be one of my students. Eli, I'm so glad that you are still playing music. Alphonse Pitch, and Steve. Thank you, Steve. Today's episode is the master of fundamental, foundational rock and roll drums. We're going to be watching Phil Rudd of AC/DC. AC/DC is what I think of if you know anything about like a mixer, you know, when you zero out a mixer or a mixing board, when you go to zero, they call that unity. AC/DC is unity rock and roll. Everything is above that and below that. That's how important AC/DC is. They are the measuring stick. Phil Rudd, of course, is a gigantic part of that measuring stick. Now look, there's an elephant in the room. We're not going to talk about all of Phil Rudd's picadillos in his personal life. AC/DC is a one-trick pony, and that's fine, because that one trick might be the greatest trick in the history of recorded music. It's blues-based, it's down and dirty, it makes you want to do naughty things, and what more can you ask out of rock and roll? That's all I want from my rock and roll, and that's what AC/DC has delivered to you since, like, what, in 1974? Now, you know, Phil Rudd has not been been with them the whole time. There was Simon Wright and Chris Slade. I love Chris Slade. Chris Slade's on one of the greatest live records ever, that Live at Donington. Chris Slade's amazing. Here's the thing, if you're the drummer for AC/DC, you're going to play like Phil Rudd. There's no room for anything other than playing like Phil Rudd. So this video is a little nugget that I found on YouTube. It's not a drum cam per se. It is some very smart, intelligent fan who decided to make a video from, looks like a little bit like the Cheap Seats, of just Phil Rudd playing, and I listened to a little bit of it, and it's just basically a grab bag of a bunch of songs during whatever concert this came from. Before we get into it, everyone please check out my Patreon, everyone check out my merch table, my merch store, and let's watch Phil Rudd of AC/DC play a whole bunch of songs. Man, he's just so groovy. If you've heard, there's going to be a lot of cuts in this video. I watched a little bit of the beginning. If you've heard me talk about the Golden 2 and 4, Phil Rudd is the gold standard of the Golden 2 and 4. Okay, so that's Back in Black. I teach Back in Black to every student that I have. I have taught Back in Black to everyone from age ranges 9 all the way to 72. Shout out, Tim. I teach all of my students how to play Back in Black. First, because it's one of the greatest songs that's ever been recorded. And second, I want to ensure the future of quality rock and roll. So I'm going to make sure that all of my students know how to play AC/DC. That's the end of that song. They're just, look, man, if you come for the shred, you're in the wrong place. If you come for songs that will last and enrich your life for the next 5 decades, you have come to the right place. Every instrumentalist in this band does not worry about trying to get on the cover of some lame, instrumental magazine. They only care about delivering badass songs and badass riffs and badass grooves. And that's the most important thing. Cliff Williams is one of the most underrated bass players in the history of bass playing. Okay, so if you want to talk about some like technique stuff, and look, man, I can't sit here and be like, there's a lot of stuff to analyze, note-wise from Phil Rudd. The thing that you can get from Phil Rudd is the thing that you can't write down. If you transcribe Phil Rudd's recorded history, none of it is hard. I don't think I've ever heard him play a 16th note on the bass drum. I don't think I've ever heard him play an E or an on the bass drum, and that's more than okay with me. Technique-wise, he does something, this will be weird, he does something that Bill Berry from REM does, or did. When we think about playing, cross-handed here if you're right-handed, he puts his right hand up over here, and that gives him enough room in his left hand to come here. Right? That is just a little small adjustment that he's made to make sure that he's getting as much crack on that golden 2 and 4 as he can. He is using those ahead drumsticks. Let me address this now. In the Joey Jordison video, I called them Easton drumsticks, those aluminum drumsticks, and I'm old, and that's what they used to be called. Easton was a baseball bat company, and they made drumsticks, and then they became Ahead. These are Ahead drumsticks that he's using. And I had a pair of the Tommy Lees, and I hate them. They feel like a bag of smashed assholes. They are the worst drumstick ever, but it works for him. Here's something that he does. He plays a 5A in his right hand and a 5B in his left hand to get more violent crack on the snare drum. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap, baby. Using that sonar, that was a Phil Rudd. That's Chuck Berry rock and roll. They're a blues rock band. Shot Down in Flames is another great song. Like, if you go see AC/DC and you see Phil Rudd, well, you're not going to see Phil Rudd with them anymore. I'm pretty sure Chris Slade is back with them again. And it's just a relentless barrage of like, oh, well, here's another great song. Oh, well, here's another great song. Oh, this song kicks ass. But what I was going to say before that thing that he was doing during Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, that's Chuck Berry. This is blues-based rock and roll. This is rock and roll that started in New Orleans. This is loud-ass, kick-ass blues music. And and I know for a fact that Angus Young's like one of his favorite guitar players is Chuck Berry. Now, this is a song that Phil Rudd did not play on. This is Thunderstruck. My hometown loves this song. Chris Slade played on this. And again, there's no shred here. What you're getting is low down, dirty. It makes your pelvis want to do things. That's what this rock and roll does. There's a reason why every stripper in the last 40 years has a routine to an AC/DC song. Because it's a visceral, just like caveman, feral experience, and it will never get old. Man, maybe it'll get old if you go see Axl Rose singing with them. I'm not down for that. I'm never going to go see them with Axl Rose playing. And Cliff's not with them anymore either. I'd be hard-pressed to go see that. But who cares about all that? This is just, like, here, okay, YouTube shred guys. All those shred dudes that play all that over-the-top stuff. I will bet you both dogs that are sitting right there that they all loved AC/DC first. I And he's just got this, it's a strutting, swinging, sexy rock and roll, man. That's what it is. He's always got just this much of a swingy lilt, especially on the hi-hat. If you can't lay it in, with an AC/DC song, you're not ready to move on. I don't think I know this song. It's awesome, because it's AC/DC. Yeah, like, you know how he's got his right hand out of his way so he can come play here and get that 2 and 4 cracking, baby. Yeah, I don't know this. Hell's Bells. What he brings to the groove, you can't write down. I could write this groove down for you, and it would be eighth notes on the top, it'd be a quarter note on the 1, a quarter note on the 3, and a quarter note on the 2 and the 4. And you can play it, and that'd be fine. But more than likely, you're not going to lay it in like Phil Rudd does. It's just, it's that thing, that metaphysical thing that we bring to our groove. I tell my students this a lot. You know, I can bring in, you know, 20 of my students, and I can have them play the exact same groove at the same exact tempo, and every one of them, it's going to feel a little different. We are all physiologically different, and we address the drums differently. You want to address the drums like Phil Rudd does. You know, you got to figure, like, when AC/DC was playing at all those big European metal festivals, all the bands, all the, you know, all those bands that we always talk about here, they're on the sides of the stage watching. Meshuggah's watching, Metallica watching, Megadeth is watching, Gojira's watching. Because this is unity rock and roll. This is where it all starts. Pushing the tempo here. Shoot the thrill. I mean, it's just every one of those grooves is basically the same. But what he brings to it, I mean, hell, that's almost a jazz lick for him. And it's not an AC/DC concert until Angus takes his shirt off. Again, they came from the blues, and, you know, like, Phil Rudd's hard to talk about just by himself because AC/DC's not one of those bands. You talk about Dave Matthews Band, you talk about Carter Beauford, or you talk about the Police, you talk about Stuart Copeland. AC/DC is the epitome of a band. It's a bunch of different, it's a recipe. Every member on their own is not a thing that is spectacular, but when you put them together, it's an unstoppable juggernaut of fucking kick-ass, make you want to fuck rock and roll. They are greater than the sum of their parts. And they've been doing it almost 50 years and releasing, you know, people always make that joke, oh man, here's another AC/DC song, it sounds like the other AC/DC song. But it doesn't matter because it's always kick ass. They found a formula and it works. Phil Rudd, if you can't lay down a groove like Phil Rudd, you're not ready for the next step. You know, we've seen him play maybe 6 or 7 different songs playing the same groove, and it feels great. So yeah, you know, this video is a lot longer than that. Unity rock and roll. Phil Rudd, AC/DC. What I was going to say, I was trying to get this out earlier. They come from the blues like Black Sabbath did, but they came from it in a more straighter, in like a straighter way. You know, Black Sabbath, and I'm not saying which one's better because they're pretty much the same. Sabbath with Ozzy. I'm sorry, all you Dio fans that talked about like, what the fuck ever, really? You're cheese balls if you think Dio Sabbath is better than Ozzy Sabbath. Get the fuck out of here with that. But, you know, the early Sabbath, first 5, 6 records, and AC/DC, they both were, you know, heavy rock metal, and they used the blues, but they used the blues in different ways. AC/DC came from more of like a BB King, like Freddie King. They came from more like Freddie King and turned it up real loud and made it raunchy as shit. And Black Sabbath came from like more like low down dirty swinging blues, but that's where they all originated. If you come here for shreds, you're not getting any, and you shouldn't, because it's fucking Phil Rudd with AC/DC. This is one of the greatest bands of all time, and it's proof that you do not have to play 15/7 to do something that's impressive and to do something that moves generations. Not just moves a crowd, moves generations. If I were to have kids, my kids would be listening to AC/DC, and their kids will listen to AC/DC, and that makes me feel good about today's day and age and the life that we're having to lead right now. It's all going to be okay, because, you know, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next week, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe next month. But even if it's 2 months from now, we're still going to have AC/DC, and we're going to still have Phil Rudd's badass swinging, raunchy, make you want to fuck grooves to make us feel better. Keep practicing until it's easy.